The trial took place between June 1st and June 9th, and out of more than 500 potential jurors called to the courthouse, only 12 jurors and 6 alternates were chosen. Because the case had flooded the local news, it took 3 days of intense questioning to weed out people who had already made up their minds. In the final round of cuts, prosecutors used their veto power to remove the last 3 black candidates in the pool, meaning that there would be no black jury members. The defense team immediately filed an official protest, claiming the state was deliberately rigging an all-white jury against a black teenager. The final 3 candidates who were rejected were all teachers who worked with school-age students, and the prosecution argued that they might carry a sympathetic bias towards a young student defendant. The judge agreed and allowed the strikes to stand.
And what we need here is juries and a judge of all colors who are all non-biased, that can actually look at the facts and actually go, okay, here's what's gonna happen. Okay? Also, for the jury to rule out, yes, that is extremely fucked up, and I'm glad he's getting another hearing on their part because that's unfair. But I really hope in this hearing that there will be juries and a judge, or at least juries of multiple varieties of races, all non-biased on both sides, and a judge that is non-biased on both sides to take a look at both facts and what actually happened.
During the trial, the state argued that Karmelo provoked the argument and that a single push from an unarmed student who verbally stated that he didn't want to fight does not justify deadly force. The defense leaned entirely into the size difference between the boys and argued that the push created a split-second justifiable fear for his life. On June 9th, after an 8-day trial, the jury deliberated for less than 3 hours. They completely rejected the self-defense argument, returning a unanimous guilty verdict for murder. In Texas, there's something called a sudden passion clause that can be used during sentencing for murder trials. It basically means that if the defense can prove that the defendant was pushed into an uncontrollable state of fear or panic directly caused by the victim, the maximum punishment drops from life in prison down to a 20-year cap. Karmelo's defense immediately tried to invoke this, but the jury rejected it, and Karmelo Anthony was sentenced to 35 years in prison with the possibility of parole after 17 and a half of those years are served. His team filed an appeal 24 hours later. Following the sentencing, massive confrontations exploded on the courthouse steps between supporters on either side, resulting in the sheriff's department making multiple arrests on the scene. I know you have thoughts on this one, so let's chat in the comments. Follow for more. I'm Angel, and this is Red Flag Files.
I'm not gonna state my opinion yet, or my truly honest opinion yet, until we go over these more videos right here, because I have more videos to go over. So let's continue with the next video.
The 35 years for murder is just not right. The evidence that shows he did not intend to kill. He went to the track meet as a regular teenage boy. He had a multi-purpose tool, which I can show anyone here the tool if they don't agree. The tool had a glass cutter on it, a glass breaker on it. It had a device that way you can cut small pieces.
So why not call it what it's actually called? Not a device, a blade. Now, keyword, they were on the field, which is a school track and school all environment, right? As we know, bringing weapons of any kind of blade, guns, clubs, etc. is prohibited. So no matter how you spin it, I'm sorry, with this one right here, that is still considered a knife, even though it is a multi-purpose tool knife, because it has a blade on it. But let's continue.
This is a rope. In his book bag, he had crossword puzzles, he had keys, he had snacks. This is a kid who was going to a track meet to compete. This kid had a 3.7 GPA. He was a captain on his football team, had leadership qualities, no priors, nothing.
Okay, riddle me this though, and I'm thinking with this, with full common sense. If he was going to a track meet, right, and other schools are attending this, he's also in football as well, right? Why did he need a multi-purpose tool knife? And nowhere in that curricular activity do you need that.
American society says, oh, black culture, you got kids that do negative things, bad things. This kid is exactly the opposite. And you got people cheering that this kid got 35 years when he could have been in society being productive instead of wasting taxpayer dollars on a kid who didn't intend to murder someone. So a lesser charge, I can agree to that, but not murder.
Well, okay, then we might agree, because I agree with all that. He had no priors. He almost definitely did not go here to kill someone. If he had this knife on him, either he was using it as a tool, or some people just have a knife for like self-defense, right? And that's like how he perceived he used it. I bet in his heart of hearts, he thought that was self-defense, right? That makes sense to me.
This is where I understand right here that having something like this can be considered protection or even a tool. But if you're in a school type setting, the field, the track, school in general, there are going to be multiple rules and stuff like that, or prohibited. Like whatsoever. They have that in literal guidelines and everything else. I even took the liberty of looking up the school it happened at and their protocols for certain types of stuff and everything. I'll show that at the end and give my opinion, but I'm just sprinkling little things little there just to remind y'all and everything. But there are more videos to get to, so let's get to it.
They didn't give Karmelo Anthony 35 years in prison because he's black. They gave him 35 years in prison because his parents didn't care about him.
The fact that the jury he had was completely corrupted and biased altogether. So we need to get an all unbiased jury and judge of all race.
Let me tell you why. Everybody has an arraignment and everybody's offered a plea deal. Everybody's offered a plea deal, everybody. If he would have pled guilty, he could have got maybe 7 years, 5 years, something small. But if he pled guilty, that would have cut his family's fundraiser short. You know, the fundraiser they bought $1 million home with, or something like that.
Actually, the GoFundMe funds are actually frozen and are actually refund back to everyone, because once he was convicted the first time, there is a policy on the GoFundMe that they don't supporting any kind of violent criminal activity or something like that once the plea has already been the verdict has already made their decision. So everything has been refunded that I know of. So they didn't buy luxury shit. They didn't.
If he would have pled guilty, it probably would have been a manslaughter charge, something like that. Prosecutors would have worked out a deal. No, but his parents said no. You're going to plead not guilty. We want you to go to trial. We're going to keep the fundraiser going. So he didn't receive 35 years because he was black. He received 35 years because the people who were supposed to be looking after him, they didn't have his best interest. They only wanted that money. And because of that state's laws, that's what they had to convict him with. It sucks, but the parents knew this going into it.
Are money-hungry, greedy bastards. Didn't have their son's best interest at all. As a mother, that highly pisses me off. And as I said, I'm going to give my opinion, both common sensely and as a mother at the end. But let's continue.
And they still decided to push him into trial. If you've ever been in trial or court, and everyone is informed if you don't take the plea, you could get the maximum. Everyone is informed of this. Man, money is the root of all evil. Because there were a ton of other things they could have convicted him for with a plea deal. His parents wanted that money.
So much for watching part 2. Part 3 will be coming up here soon. We have more videos to go over, so stay tuned and let's keep it rolling.